Hello, welcome to Seriously Butthurt Sports. I'm back with Zach Morgan talking everything NHL. We've had a crazy week since the NHL draft. Tampa Bay have finally won their Stanley Cup, and NHL free agency and trades have been on fire.
Yeah, hats off. First of all, thank you for having me again. And hats off to the Tampa Bay Lightning for finishing off a very impressive playoff run. It certainly couldn't have been easy in the bubble doing what they did, but they managed to pull it out. They took all the momentum that Dallas had and they just wiped the floor with it. They showed that they were very much the better team on the ice. And you know what? It's a well-deserved victory. Hats off. And I'm really happy to see Blake Coleman lift that cup. I'll be honest. That made nothing the Devils did better, but at least someone that was on the team got to touch a cup.
Yeah, well, they also redeemed themselves from their early exit the year before, which is now pretty much going to be erased from history, all but erased from history.
No, we'll still remember it, but
We'll
now
remember it, but we won't be talked about nearly as
it
much.
takes the wayside of the Virginia Cavaliers, wherein they lost to the 16 seed, and then the next year they came back and won it all. So it was a necessary step on their journey. Hats off. It was great to see everyone lift the cup. It's a shame that we only got to see Steven Stamkos in one game. But after that first shift where he scores on his first shot, I kind of had a feeling that this was Tampa's cup to lose.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, again, congrats to Tampa Bay, all you Tampa Bay fans. Revel in your glory for, well, a season, but a couple months, because the new season is probably going to start around January 1st, I think.
Now you're I hate to say it, but now that we are done with that, it's time to move on. We don't really get to focus on your Stanley Cup championship this year. We will pay attention to the parties. I did see that there was a boating excursion, and they forgot Mikhail Sergachev. So that's organization's going real well. Organization's going real well over there.
Great job.
But speaking of organization, there were many organizations with organizational problems at the NHL draft. And a lot of those problems consisted of other teams taking players that they needed.
Yes.
So diving right
into the NHL draft as expected, the New York Rangers took Alexis Lafreniere with the first pick in the draft. No surprise, no shocker. He'll be wearing number 13 for the New York Rangers.
Very strange that a number one overall pick wearing 13 in the New York, New Jersey area. That's so weird. Sounds familiar.
Well, the Devils also had three
signs of Nico Hischier.
The Devils had 3 first-round picks as well. And Zach,
they did.
Being a diehard Devils fan, tell us a little about your 3 picks.
First of all, I've made tragic mistakes in my life, and I don't advise anyone to follow them. That being said, the Devils, when it came down to the 7th overall pick, and after everything had cleared, the prospects that were left on the board, Alexander Holtz and Marco Rossi were the 2 big guys I had my eye on, and I'm really happy to say they went with Holtz. Alexander Holtz is a great right-wing defenseman. He is a player who can score from anywhere in the offensive zone. He is a big-time finisher, and on top of that, he can also make his own play. And you know what? The beautiful thing about him is he is a right shot, right wing guy who slots well next to either Nico Hischier or Jack Hughes. It doesn't matter. He can play next to either one of them, and that is huge for the Devils. So that was their first pick. And then the next 2 picks, they took another top-end scorer in Dawson Mercer. He's a guy who not only can play either center or wing, it looks like he can do well on either position, but he can also produce on both the power play and the penalty kill. And special teams has been a big area of weakness for the Devils over the past few seasons. So seeing someone who is a special teams specialist is definitely good there. And then they took with the 20th overall pick after the Rangers traded up for the 19th pick, which we'll talk about in a second, Shakir Mukhamadullin. Now, Shakir is a guy from Russia. He played with Ufa, and he looked really good. He's a big, strong defenseman with a left-hand shot, and he could be NHL ready pretty quickly, it seems. Big guy, finishes his checks, and quite frankly, it's exactly what the Devils need. Looks like he fits in well with the other big Devils defensive prospects in Kevin Ball and Ty Smith. So Devils did really. I'm happy with how the Devils did in the first round. It would have been nice if Askarov slipped to 18. That was kind of a little thing I was really enjoying. I told you about that. Maybe my my Mad Hatter goalie experiment would have been my 1A Mackenzie Blackwood, 1B Yaroslav Askarov, and just I'm happy because I like goalies. But
although Askarov went at 11 to the Nashville Predators, making
he did go. He was taken off at 11 to the Nashville Predators. As we're kind of working our way up, I do want to touch on this before we forget. The number 2 overall pick was Quinton Byfield. This guy is massive. He's 6'4", 215. Look for him to add on to that frame. And the name that people keep throwing in with this guy is Joe Thornton. That's a pretty good name to have next to you. So Quinton Byfield goes number 2 to the Kings. In the process, he becomes the highest drafted player of color. Great for the growth of the game. He received congratulations from Evander Kane, who previously shared the record with Seth Jones at number 4. And quite frankly, he's in LA and playing for the Kings. Magic Johnson has already reached out to this guy. It looks like the lights are shining bright, and I have no reason to think that he won't that he won't grow and develop into the face of the franchise for the LA Kings.
Well, I mean, in the OHL for Sudbury, he scored 82 points in 45 games, 32 of those points being goals, 50 of them being assists in 45 games. Those are some numbers right there. So
those are some numbers. And let's actually double back to Marco Rossi for a second. He slipped. The Devils were looking at him possibly at number 7. They went with Holtz. Then the Sabres passed on him, slips to the Wild at number 9. He was the CHL's leading scorer last season with 120 points in 56 games. The breakdown for that being
39 goals, 81 assists.
39 goals. That's absurd. And this guy slipped to number 9? Are you kidding?
And
that's a steal of the draft, hopefully.
He was in the OHL. From what I'm... And Minnesota...
yes, he was in the OHL.
He was in the OHL.
Yeah, he
was
in
Minnesota.
The OHL.
Minnesota's in a full-fledged rebuild, it's looking like. So, not a bad guy to rebuild with.
Not a bad guy at all. And we talk a lot. I've mentioned a lot about number 1 centers. He's a guy who looks like a real good number 1 center, which brings me back to number 3 as we jump all over the place. The Ottawa Senators took Tim Stützle with their 3rd overall pick. And then with the 5th overall pick, they took Jake Sanderson. The Ottawa Senators were the first team to have 2 picks in the top 5 since I think the Islanders had 2 picks in 2000. So there were a lot of expectations with what the Senators would do. Tim Stützle is a guy who is coming out of Germany, and he scored 34 points, 7 goals, 27 assists on 132 shots on goal in 41 games. 132 shots on goal in 41 games is absurd.
Yeah.
To top that, his averages of 0.66 assists per game and 0.83 points per game are the best by an under 18 player in the history of the DEL, or the German top professional hockey league. And he averaged 18:43 of ice time in 5 games for Germany at the World Junior Classics in 2020. This is a guy who looks to continue that name of great German players that we've seen, continued by Leon Draisaitl. The fact that Germany won the silver medal at the Olympics last time. German hockey is on the rise, and Tim Stützle is an absolute product of that. And then you move to Jake Sanderson, who this kid is another great defensive prospect coming out of the U.S. National Development Team program. We've seen Quinn Hughes. We've seen Charlie McAvoy. We've seen these guys come into the league and just take over with their skating ability and puck moving ability. Same type of player. With a right-hand shot, Jake Sanderson can really drive that power play, and he's still got a defensive mindset, a dominant defensive mindset, excuse me. So the National Development Team captain, definitely going to be someone for the Senators to watch. The Senators did really well in this draft, I got to say.
Well, I mean, and then you just to touch on trades and free agency a little bit, then you go and see that they signed Matt Murray to a 4-year deal as well, putting a goalie in the net behind all those guys. I mean,
and
Ottawa's
sure
looking to compete here.
Ottawa is looking to they've come a long way since Peter Dorian had the interview in, I want to say 2018, where someone asked him what good things can we expect from the Ottawa Senators this year, and he kind of sat there with a 1,000-yard stare for like 10 seconds, and then he comes up with this gem: "We're a team."
We're a team. That's it.
Dorian.
Well, yes, they are
definitely genius.
They are now definitely looking like a team.
Definitely looking like a team, and they had the most fun pick. The way they announced the pick of Stützle, I don't know if you saw it. They got Alex Trebek to do it in a Jeopardy
yes, that's
style.
right. I did see that. I did see that. So they take the gold medal for
they won the first round of the draft with that move alone.
Yes, getting Alex
won't
Trebek,
get an argument from me on that one.
Yeah, getting Alex Trebek to do a Jeopardy style pick selection. That's one that'll be in the books for years to come.
For sure. And as we shift back to the day 2 trade, like you mentioned, Matt Murray going to the Senators for a 52nd pick and a prospect named Jonathan Gruden, who isn't coaching the Raiders. Matt Murray, the writing was on the wall that he was going to be moved once Tristan Jarry signed his deal. There was no way the Penguins were going to keep both guys. Both guys were due for contracts, and it's tough. Matt Murray is a guy who, yes, he has a lot of postseason success. He has the 2 Stanley Cup championships, but he has been known to let up a bad goal here and there, and that's probably soured the organization a little bit, but it's definitely soured the fans. And Matt Murray, even when he took over, a lot of people I talked to were saying that, yeah, it's great that he's here, but they weren't expecting it. It's similar to how Jordan Binnington came up. Great, but they really weren't expecting it. Binnington was a career AHL guy. Matt Murray, I don't think he was on that projection, but he wasn't the goalie of the future. Jarry had that mark. Jarry was kind of the guy that the organization had the idea of the future. So really seeing how it played out, I guess you could say it's not too surprising that they moved on from Murray, but you look at the difference in accolades, the difference in experience. It's a shocking move, and I find it to be a bit troubling. Jarry's coming off of a all-star. Then another trade that we saw go down during the draft, Elias Anderson was moved from the Rangers to the LA Kings in exchange for the 59th pick in the draft, I believe. Yes. And Elias Anderson is the guy who he was drafted 7th overall by the Rangers in 2017. It just didn't work out in New York. This is also the kid who, I don't know if you remember, he won the silver medal at the World Junior Classics and tossed it into the crowd and was suspended from international play for that. So interesting play. It's a low-ish risk for the Kings, but if it works out, that's another really good player for them that could possibly center their third line, maybe even their second line. And I'm sorry, it was the 60th overall pick. Excuse me.
Yes. Oh, yep. Number 60. Yeah. Well, again, lots of moves being made already. Again, partially probably due because they're eyeing that January 1st start from what I saw. Just touch upon.
Yes, that is the target. Sorry,
just,
you go.
Just want to touch upon.
I'm in timeout.
Because we all know, as I've mentioned, I'm an Avalanche fan, so just want to touch upon them a little bit. They drafted Justin Barron, defenseman out of Halifax, who's another great skating defenseman. Avalanche are really making moves on the defensive side. They also traded for Brandon Saad. They also just got Devin Tays from the New York Islanders, so they're looking to really shore up their defense, which was, you could say, suspect these playoffs, which is what you could say led to them being knocked out when they were. So they're looking to really shore up the back end of their lines. You look like you wanted to say something,
makes sense
Zach.
Because what the Avalanche are doing makes sense. With Devin Tays, though, the big thing, and I always think trading large assets for signing rights is a big risk. I would like to see Taves sign. It would make sense. But what the Avalanche are doing in shoring up their defense makes sense. They have their top line set between Landeskog, McKinnon, and Rantanen.
Oh, yeah.
So after that, it's kind of figuring everything else out. You just want to shore up that defense behind Gerard, Cale Makar, and eventually Bowen Byram's going to come up. So the Avalanche are looking really good on defense for the future.
Well, there's even a possibility Bowen Byram's, who was the number 4 pick in last year's draft for the Avalanche, could be coming up to the NHL this coming season, possibly. So that could be why they're making these moves, because they're looking to just have everybody on that defense, which those are a lot of good names on a defense once it's all said and done.
Oh, yeah. And let's see, what else do we have here?
We got a lot of goalie action going on this offseason. A lot of
goalie action.
Goalies are moving around everywhere.
Before we move too far, the first move after my God, what? Help me out here. After Matt Murray went to the Senators, the next goalie that was moved was Devin Dubnyk, who was traded to the San Jose Sharks in exchange for a 5th-round pick. The Sharks received Devin Dubnyk, while the Wild retained 50% of that salary, and they also got a 7th-round pick for their trouble. Martin Jones hasn't been the guy. He hasn't looked good. Devin Dubnyk has proved he's the guy. Plus, at a cap hit of a little over $2 million, that seems like a no-brainer for me.
And we also have Henrik Lundqvist got bought out from the Rangers, and he's moving on to Washington to be a backup over there.
Yeah, maybe he can win a ring finally.
Yeah, I think that's even in his statement, that was part of the reason for him. It's all about winning right now, and he sees it.
I mean, as it should be.
Oh yeah, definitely. He's at the back end of his career. His career was pretty much wasted in New York, and he would say he's
it was. It was pretty much. It
was wasted in New York, and he even said that looking at it, the Capitals checked all his boxes, so he's looking to back up.
Capitals check all his boxes, and it's close to New York.
Yeah, and they do still have a chance to win another one. So there's
absolutely, especially with Ilya Samsonov stepping into his own.
Yeah,
and he's a guy who he's been establishing himself. It's a bit of a bet to let Holtby walk, but I think it makes sense in the long run, especially since you can get a guy like Henrik Lundqvist to back up. And sure, Henrik can't go in every game, but he still has those performances left in him. We still saw some great saves out of the guy during this past season.
Oh yeah,
but that was something that needed to happen. I mean, the plug needed to be pulled, unfortunately, for Henrik. He really wanted to stick around in New York, but it just
Yeah,
The
it
stars
wasn't.
didn't line up there.
Yeah, no. Plus, I mean, also is adding another veteran to that team. Plus, having a veteran like him to sort of help Samsonov grow a little more in that goalie role is probably something that'll help out going forward too.
Absolutely.
So other goalies that have
And
been on the
then
move,
we move
I'm
on to
blanking on all of them.
no worries.
There's a lot
The other
of them.
goalies that were moved after that, this is kind of in no particular order at this point.
Oh yeah, no.
We just talked about how the Rangers wasted Henrik Lundqvist's career. I would be a hypocrite if I did not bring this up. The Devils bought out the last 2 years on Corey Schneider's contract. I am extremely heartbroken by this deal, and when I read about it, I was damn near inconsolable. It's amazing that I can talk about it without tears running down my face right now. That being said, I am actually like legitimately heartbroken by the buyout. Corey Schneider was from 2013 through 2017 was a top 5 goalie in the NHL, and quite frankly, he made the Devils watchable during those years right after their Stanley Cup final appearance, where they were on the decline really badly. He kept them alive in games, and unfortunately, the Devils couldn't put a team around him and couldn't maximize how good this guy was. He absolutely should have won a ring, and it's just a shame that the Devils failed him the way they did. But he is bought out, and the Islanders went ahead and signed him. Before the Islanders signed him, though, the Devils did get another Corey. They signed Corey Crawford to a 2-year, a little under $8 million total, so a little under $4 million cap hit. Corey Crawford's a guy where he makes sense for the Devils to add. He's a guy with Stanley Cup experience. He's a guy who's been in the NHL for a good while, and he sets up well to mentor the young goalie of Mackenzie Blackwood, who, for all intents and purposes, was the only goalie that was really worth playing, and the only goalie who was really gave the Devils a fighting chance. Corey Schneider, like I just said, he was too inconsistent he was just too inconsistent, and he showed him showing up in that rare form that he was in prior. It was just coming less and less likely. So unfortunately, Blackwood was the only viable option last year. Now we don't have to ruin Mackenzie Blackwood and just ride him until he breaks. So
and also with Corey Schneider, most of that stems to injuries he's had. In his career,
yes,
so
100%.
That's where the inconsistency started coming from. So
Corey Schneider got hurt at some point in 2017, and he has not been the same since.
Yeah,
I don't know what he did to his hips. I don't know what he did to his knee. I don't know what happened, but the fact that the man is skating is apparently nothing short of a miracle. The way Martin Brodeur has described it in various season ticket holder events.
Well. Hopefully he can have a little bit of a revival in New York, just because you don't want to see another career go to waste from someone who's...
I believe that he can potentially put up really good numbers as a backup, but this is really it. If this doesn't work out, I hate to say I don't see a future in the league for him, and I really hope I eat those words. I really do, because he is at the top of his game. Watch the way he skates in the crease. He is a joy to watch, and the way he was able to just cover up every possible angle was a thing of beauty. Now, before I continue to gush about Corey Schneider in his prime, because I can and will do that for however long I need to, let's move forward. We saw Thatcher Demko really step into his own in the playoffs, and as a result of that, the Canucks were probably not super excited about handing over a very long contract to Jacob Markstrom. So Markstrom did not re-sign with Vancouver, but he did find his deal in Calgary. He signed a 6-year, $36 million deal. This seems pretty fair for a guy who, especially in the playoffs, was showing up like a top 15 goalie, top 15, top 10 goalie in the league. That's a really good move for them. Calgary's had some inconsistencies in net, and them acquiring a starting caliber goalie in Jacob Markstrom is very huge for them. but that's a team that will probably have to blow up the roster at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. If they continue to fail in the playoffs the way they do. So it's a big sign that they still trust in this core. We'll see if it pays off. Vancouver did sign another goalie, though. They signed Braden Holtby to a 2-year, again, around $8 million, a little over, I think, in this case.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's 2 years, $8.6 million. This is just have a veteran there, keep everything warm. Thatcher Demko is the goalie of the future for the Vancouver Canucks.
Mm-hmm.
Braden Holtby on a 2-year deal is a perfect little bridge deal to kind of ease that era into play.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not super abrupt. The pressure's not totally there, but by the end of this contract, if he spends this whole contract on Vancouver, this will be Thatcher Demko's job without question.
Or maybe one of those things where Demko plays backup for first year of the contract, and you swap them in the second year of that contract.
That could be a very likely move, especially given Thatcher Demko's lack of experience. He was a backup last year. It could be too much to ask him to jump into that starting role right away.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely a good move by Vancouver. I really, really like that. And then the last of the goalies that moved.
Cam Talbot also got moved.
Cam Talbot did sign a 2-year deal with the Minnesota Wild. He'll step into the spot that Devin Dubnyk gave up, and I'm sure he'll play alongside Alex Stalock, I think. Googling to make sure. Yes, Alex Stalock. Yes. So Alex Stalock and Cam Talbot, that's going to be the tandem for the Minnesota Wild. The Wild are rebuilding.
Yes.
Both of those goalies are solid, but the Wild are in a rebuild at this point for all intents and purposes. So great. They have their net shored up. Maybe it'll be watchable. Outside of that.
Well, even just before we came on to start recording, there's a little news out of Vegas, possibly looking to find a way to get Pietrangelo on that team as well.
Vegas is emerging as the favorite to land Alex Pietrangelo, especially since the Blues signed Torrey Krug to a huge deal, almost out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just the way of the league. Torrey Krug signed a 7-year, $45.5 million contract with the St. Louis Blues, and this contract comes with after the entire season of speculation that they didn't have the cap to provide a deal to Alex Pietrangelo. Granted, Alex Pietrangelo is going to command a bit more money than Torrey Krug got, but it was very weird to see, at least from in my opinion, it was a weird move. But I guess it's just time to move forward. Real shame though. I love watching Alex Pietrangelo, and he was the heartbeat of the St. Louis Blues, especially during that playoff run.
Oh, yes, definitely.
So that's a tough loss for them.
And you even said if Vegas somehow pulls this off, basically you're saying Vegas is winning the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, I mean, he's that good. He is that good. I don't know.
Well, in Vegas,
it will happen that year or this year, but with him on the roster, that could work out very, very well.
I mean, and Vegas has made their runs the last 2-3 years. They've been a team anyway, so they're a good team in their own right. But adding a player like Pietrangelo just puts them through the roof.
Gives you that Stanley Cup experience that you know everyone is raving about. So that could be a thing that potentially gets Vegas over the hump, because they've been very close a good number twice now over the last 3 years.
And I'm looking through. I'm trying to see any other huge moves that have been made. There's been so much going on in such a short period
there's
of
the
time.
big meat and potatoes one. Do we just dive right in? Yeah, I think we should, because I just mentioned it. So the biggest free agent had to have been, at least in my opinion, former MVP Taylor Hall. He was expected to sign a big multi-year deal somewhere where he had a chance to win. That was always his top priority, is he wants to win. So he signed with Buffalo. on a 1-year, $8 million deal.
That's how that all came about. That's how that all ended.
I look. It's a 1-year prove it deal for sure. $8 million. It's for an MVP caliber player. That's a good deal. I hope this works out for Taylor Hall. I really, really do. I Buffalo's got solid core, but the winning culture kind of hasn't been there. So that in that sense, the move doesn't really make in that effect, the move doesn't make sense to me. But it's a 1-year prove it deal. He is betting on himself. I get the betting on himself. I get the contract. I just don't get the location. If that.
Well, then you have him joining Jack Eichel, who, if I'm not mistaken,
that would be a pretty combo.
Voiced his frustration with the non-winning ways up there. I
will say this: Jack Eichel, Jeff Skinner, and Taylor Hall. That's a really, really nice top line, but it does require either Jeff Skinner or Taylor Hall to switch to the right side. But we will see what happens there.
Well, I bet if you pitch it to both of them and say, hey, we want you to be our top line, and if you do, we will possibly actually win. I feel like one of them will be like, okay, let's do this.
Well, you have two of the top 3 forwards from the 2010 NHL draft now on the same roster. So that's always fun. Jeff Skinner is a fun player to watch. And that, you know what? I like the idea of having Jack Eichel centering those 2 guys. That could be a very, very fun, very potent lineup. A lot of I don't want to do the rant on Devils fans. I don't.
I mean, nah, you don't have to. It's fine.
No, I don't. Look, the fact of the matter is, here's the best they'll get. No Devils fan really has any right to say anything bad about Taylor Hall. He was a consummate professional when he was here. He carried the corpse of a team that was the 2017-2018 Devils to the playoffs. He carried him and Corey Schneider carried them to the Game 3 victory. Those were the 2 players that won. Corey Schneider was the real player that stole that game. He stood on his head with a broken hip. It was incredible. And yes, he got hurt the next year. It didn't work out the year where we had the big expectations. And yes, his large contract was probably a distraction to the team. But he never asked to be traded. He never asked to get booed by his home fans on the power play. The fact is, the way that some Devils fans have been treating the only person to win MVP wearing a Devils jersey disgusts me. And I wish him nothing but the best. And if I were him, I would never go near. I don't even, I don't blame him for how he might feel about Devils fans, especially with how everything went down regarding his exit, because there shouldn't be there, but I've talked to a lot of Devils fans who have very interesting opinions on him that I just simply don't agree with.
Well, New York, New Jersey has always been a very tough place to play for anybody, no matter how good you are.
That New York media bleeds into New Jersey. It's amazing. We're a small market team with a major media market. It's insane. I'll never understand it. But
fan bases out here, you don't perform. It doesn't matter how good you are,
or how big you are. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. They'll find something to criticize and what's the word I'm looking for? Criticize and bash you for. Yep. So it's just the way how it goes. And I feel like there was something that happened in Edmonton.
A lot of things happened in Edmonton. I mean, nothing good. The Edmonton Oilers have been particularly active. An interesting re-sign that I saw was they somehow convinced Jesse Puljujärvi to re-sign with them. Puljujärvi last season, before everything shut down, he was in Finland refusing to come over to the Edmonton Oilers because he had demanded a trade. So that's something to keep an eye on. But the Edmonton Oilers also signed
Tyson Barrie and Mike Smith.
Tyson Barrie and Mike Smith. Mike Smith was kind of expected. He played really well in that backup role behind Mikko Koskinen. So that made Mike Smith was kind of something that you saw coming. Tyson Barrie, though, is a big signing for them because it really helps shore up that defense. And the rumor was that Connor McDavid is not happy with the team he had. So you get Tyson Barrie, that's a big way to shore up some defensive holes. And
he's definitely, I mean, watching him in Colorado, the guy's great. He's a good defenseman. He will bring a lot to that defensive unit, and maybe Connor McDavid is now a little happier with that when it leads. I mean, they also signed Kyler Turris. They signed Tyler Ennis. Tyler Ennis just Edmonton native, so he's going to his hometown. Kyler Turris was with Nashville, so they're looking to.
Yeah, that was an interesting buyout, but a buyout that kind of made sense. The Predators acquired Turris and part of that Duchesne deal, but the Predators wanted Duchesne. And eventually they were able to sign Duchesne. So once they signed Duchesne in free agency, I figured it was a matter of time before Turris was gone. I'm just surprised they weren't able to trade him, but you don't perform well, that's how it goes.
Yep. Well, like you said, it's been a fast-paced offseason so far in the NHL.
Oh, Tyler Toffoli re-signed with Montreal, 4 years, $17 million.
There you go.
I mean, that's a really good deal. Tyler Toffoli is a very strong player.
And again, there seem to be a few teams that are getting pretty good, if not very good deals. I mean, we talked a little bit earlier. I mean, when I saw what Matt Murray went for, to me, it was almost as if Ottawa was getting a great return for what they gave up for him. Just a prospect and a second-round draft pick, I believe it was, for a guy with his experience and his accolades in the playoffs. But again, you do got to get through the regular season to get to the playoffs. So,
for sure, but I don't know. Things are very weird right now with the NHL in terms of player value and in terms of salary cap. So there are definitely teams taking advantage of that, and the Devils are definitely one of them. They were able to make two big trades. They traded a 5th-round pick to get Ryan Murray, and then they went ahead and traded Joey Anderson for Andreas Johnson. Andreas Johnson is a guy who can really play well on that in the top 6 for the Devils. The only reason this trade happened is because of salary cap woes on Toronto's end, but I'm all good with it. Joey Anderson is a guy who can make the NHL. It just hasn't really worked, and I believe part of that is on the Devils. They just haven't been able to develop him. I think a change of scenery will be good with him. That is a guy who he can definitely contribute on a 4th line, maybe even a 3rd line situation. Really all the best, but it's a great move for the Devils and a great move for Tom Fitzgerald on both ends, especially getting Ryan Murray, who probably, just with that addition, he's probably the best defensive defenseman on the Devils right now. So a lot of stuff going on, but it will all, when the dust settles, I'm sure we'll all be able to make some really bad predictions about what's going to happen.
Eventually. And again, like we've already mentioned, NHL is looking for a pretty quick turnaround starting January 1st. So that's also playing into everything and all the fast-paced nature of this offseason so far. But going back to your 3 first-round draft picks, how long do you think before we see them in the NHL?
I agree.
Where do they go right in?
I agree. Let's see. For Holtz, that's a bit tricky. It depends, I guess, on depends on when he comes over. If he comes over right away, maybe at some point this season, but I would say next season would be the target for him. Same thing with Dawson Mercer. Maybe a couple seasons down the line for Dawson Mercer. Now, Shakir Makami-Doolin, that's a guy who he might be in the NHL sooner than you think. He's built and he's a grown man. He is built for the NHL. So that's a player who could make his debut sooner than you'd think.
Well, he's
I would
6'3", 180-ish.
6'3". Yeah, I think so. I think
he's
right.
around 180, and he'll probably put on a few more pounds in a
6'3", 180
in an NHL strength training regiment. Probably put on a couple more pounds of muscle too. So
for sure. Yeah. So I would probably say within the next season for some of them, next couple seasons for the other one. There's the thing with the Devils is there's not really, I think we know better than to have expectations for the season. So
just something you've all learned over the last few years.
Yeah.
Mitigate the expectations.
Yeah. Expectations are just, let's just go into the season. Let's just hope everyone has a good time, has fun, and really enjoys the game of hockey. Okay. Let me have that.
If everything works out, especially these 3 picks, maybe the Devils have a quicker turnaround than anyone can see.
I think that the pieces that the Devils need are either in the system or on the roster. Now it's just a matter of time.
Gotcha.
So
just a matter of time when it all comes together.
Exactly. And I trust in Tom Fitzgerald. He has done a great job so far, and he is not going after big free agents this offseason. So Matt Hoffman will not be even there's no way Matt Hoffman will be in a Devils jersey, which is fine. But I believe Matt Hoffman is one of the last high tier free agent forwards on the market.
Yeah, the thing is,
it's more than likely he'll end up in Florida. But
yeah, well, again, it's him and Pietrangelo who are pretty much the two top tier. Like we already said, Pietrangelo looks like he may go to Vegas. Hoffman, let's see, was with Florida. We'll see where he winds up going.
We will.
Trying to see if there's anyone that's been mentioned in the running, but I'm not seeing anything for him as of right now. But again, time will always tell. Both of them will definitely be signed somewhere before the start of next season. That's for sure. They're both way too good not to get on a team. But before we sign off, any other big signings, big trades that you want to talk about, Zach?
No, I'm already I'm broken by the Corey Schneider stuff, I'll be honest. Something to kind of keep an eye on is Chicago. There are some rumblings that there are 4 really important players to the Blackhawks organization who aren't particularly happy with how things have gone down.
One of them being Jonathan Toews.
With the sense of,
was very vocal.
Yeah. So letting Crawford and Saad go is definitely kind of had some sort of effect on the locker room. And Jonathan Toews, as Ralph was saying, is not happy. The direct quote is, "Bottom line is, I want to win. The expectation for the other leaders on this team and myself is to come ready to training camp every year to be a playoff team. We prepare ourselves to win a cup for our fans. I've never been told that we were going through a rebuild. That has never been communicated to me, for that matter. A lot of this comes as a shock because it's completely different direction than we expected."
Yes.
So, yikes. I will say that after they caught Edmonton off guard, I was expecting them to kind of reload a little bit, but who knows? They did re-sign Malcolm Subban in net. I'm not sure if he's ready to be a starter, but I guess they're going to take a shot. I don't expect them to hold on to all 4 players. I think Patrick Kane, I think Jonathan Toews will still be there. I'm not so sure about Duncan Keith or Brent Seabrook, to be honest with you.
Well,
those are
what happens with them this next season might also play into what winds up happening with them. If they somehow come out and have a very good season, maybe all 4 consider staying there a little longer. if there's a lot of locker room discrepancy and say not so good locker room camaraderie because of all this, then definitely they'll probably look to move on and find somewhere a little more settled for them. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens in Chicago, especially with them clearly being caught off guard. Because if you're not telling someone like Jonathan Toews what's going on, I doubt you're telling anybody else in that locker room what's going on.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting to see what happens.
Keep your eye on Chicago because that's a team with a lot of young pieces, especially on offense. They have Alex Nylander, Dylan Strome, Kirby Doc. They have got a lot of pieces that really show well or trend well for the future, but they do have those 4 veterans who delivered not 1, not 2, but 3 Stanley Cups to them. So
yeah,
definitely something to watch.
Yes, it is. Well, thanks for joining me, Zach. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We keep your ears out for all our baseball podcasts. Even though the Yankees are out, as Nick and I said in our latest baseball episode, we are still committed, as we promised, to bringing you full baseball coverage. Zach and I will take a little bit of a break now that the season is wound down. Draft is over, all the free agencies. But as soon as we get closer to the start of next season, Zach and I will be back to talk more about the NHL and make our predictions once some of the dust settles. But keep listening for our next few episodes when it comes to baseball. Right now, Tampa Bay is winning 3-1. Thank you. But Zach,
Houston's cheating. And I'm sorry. This is where I plug my social media. Right. Thank you again for having me, Ralph. You guys can keep tabs on me on Twitter at Captain_Z Morgan, and on Instagram at Zacharias, ZAICHARIUS. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's coming in the pipeline. I'm really excited about. A lot's going to be happening over the next couple months, not just in hockey. So should be a good time. I can't thank you enough for having me on, Ralph. I do love to talk about hockey. I'm sorry that my dog is barking in the background right now, but he is unamused with the fact that he is not being paid attention to. So I should go deal with Doggy.
Well,
he's a good boy.
Zach, it's always a pleasure talking hockey with you. I'll let you go get to your dog, Max. And if
Yep.
you want to hear a little bit more on why the Astros are still cheating, I go a little bit more in depth on our latest MLB postseason episode. So go check that out. Zach, thanks once again. Have a great day. Peace out, everybody.
Take care.